Iran and the US have agreed to set up communication lines to keep the Strait of Hormuz open. Tracking data shows that the maritime traffic is flowing at a faster pace than what we've seen since Feb 28th. But the big Hormuz question still remains unanswered. Who actually controls the Strait of Hormuz? Tehran has reiterated its intent to maintain control over the vital shipping lane under international law. Mincing no words, they say it will never go back to the way the Strait of Hormuz functioned before the war started. It also has issued a clear message that the strait is not going back to pre-war conditions. Listen to this.
I may have been among the first to say this, right at the beginning of the war, before there was even a ceasefire. I posted on X and made it clear, everyone should know that the administration of the strait will never return to the way it was before the war. Of course, we will fully comply with international law.
Ghalibaf's sobering tone comes in contrast to US President Donald Trump's upbeat one. Trump claimed that the strait is totally open and record amount of oil is passing through it.
We're doing very well with respect to the Hormuz Strait. We took in more oil yesterday than has ever gone through the strait. You probably see that we have an oil gusher. The strait is totally open, you know that, and we're negotiating. We'll see how that all goes.
According to Iranian leaders, Washington has agreed to release $12 billion in frozen funds to Iran. The US also suspended sanctions on Iranian oil, and this temporarily lifts sanctions on Iran to allow it to produce, sell and deliver crude and related products through August 21st. But Trump's claim and Trump's critics claim that it would allow Iran to rebuild its military prowess. Trump dismissed these concerns but did not answer the question if Iran has leverage on him.
Well, they're not supposed to be doing that, so we'll see, but they're supposed to use money to buy food for their people, because right now their people are very hungry and they're buying it exclusively from us. Corn, soybeans, should be a lot of money. I hope it's a lot of money. If Iran doesn't live up to their agreement, or if they're not behaving, I will do what I have to do.
Does that give them leverage over you, Mr. President?
Say it?
Does that give them leverage, the Iranians leverage over you?
Oh, you're so leverage.
Meanwhile, Iranian Parliament Speaker, Chief Negotiator Mohammad Bagher Ghalibaf arrived in Oman to discuss the joint efforts to consolidate arrangements for managing shipping in the strait. Oman said that it reaffirmed commitment to international law and toll-free safe passage through the strait in talks with Iranian negotiators. The primary legal framework governing global waterways is the 1982 United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea, and it does not permit any coastal nation to unilaterally block or restrict commercial shipping. Oman ratified this treaty in 1989, while Iran signed but never ratified the treaty. Iran argues that the older 1958 Geneva Convention on the Territorial Sea applies to it. Under this framework, Iran views its section of the strait as sovereign territorial waters subject to the right of innocent passage rather than transit passage. Under the innocent passage standard, a coastal state can temporarily suspend transit if a foreign vessel poses a threat to its peace, good order, or security. Now, from Paris, I'm now being joined by Elijah J. Magnier, war correspondent and analyst. Elijah, always a pleasure speaking with you. Thanks so much for making time for us. Is the Strait of Hormuz problem resolved? Trump says US retains control. Iran still maintains they will control as per international law. It will never return to pre-war conditions. Who controls it?
Thank you for having me. For 60 days, nobody is going to control it as stipulated in the MOU. However, also in the MOU, there is a point where Iran and Oman will have to entertain discussions to agree how they're going to run the Strait of Hormuz. Now, as you rightly said, each one had a different view of which law to adopt on the Strait of Hormuz. Is it a free passage or innocent passage? Is it a 1982 or 1958 law? We know that Iran did not ratify the UNCLOS 1982. However, We also know that Turkey, for example, is not asking for fees for passage, but it asks for maintenance, environment, and security. This is something that Iran can put forward and not ask for fees for passage and transit, but they can have it in a completely different way. This is what the negotiation of the 60 days are going to be maintained to discuss exactly one of these issues, that is the shape of the passage of the Strait of Hormuz and what Iran is going to do about it. And this is why we have seen the head of the delegation, Speaker Galibaf, immediately landing from Switzerland with the delegation to Oman to start the negotiation with Oman, as Iran and Oman share both the passage of the Strait of Hormuz.
Well, they've always included Oman in that passage and the right over it, and that also earned Oman a threat from the US president saying they'll bomb Oman. But let me come back to the other things more recently said by Trump. He says that US could reimpose the blockade on the Strait of Hormuz instantly if Iran violates the 60-day roadmap. Is this already a setting for resumed hostilities post this 60-day period if it lasts that long?
I don't think so. First, he said he would bomb Oman, but that was not really serious. Secondly, resuming the hostility is highly costly on the U.S. Just from what Donald Trump said, that they were 4 weeks away from the oil reserves that have depleted more than half. Normally, they have 700 million barrels as a reserve, strategic reserve oil in the U.S., the largest in the world. Now they are between 330, 340 million. They have used a lot, and they cannot refill unless the price of oil goes down seriously, where they can buy it on a very cheap price. If he's saying, I will resume the bombing or the blockade, then immediately the market is extremely sensitive to social media and these kind of details that Donald Trump needs to pay attention to. And I don't think the MOU was made for him to resume the blockade or the war. But we have to understand that Donald Trump needs to address domestic audience, those who are against him in the Congress and the elite of the U.S. society, but also the Israelis who are very upset because the war ended.
Elijah, even with the IAEA inspectors, there are differing claims from the two sides. Iran says no new commitments have been made. Nuclear talks have not even begun, while US says Iran will agree to have weapons inspections with the inspectors from the IAEA in place. Now, again, these are completely divergent interpretations of whatever happened in Switzerland. Again, I ask you, with these kind of core issues remaining unresolved and completely different takes on them, where are we heading in these next 60 days?
We need to read the MOU very clearly because the Iranians are very finicky about it. If we go to the paragraph 13, it says that after the signing of the MOU and subject to the beginning of the implementation, so they start implementing paragraph 1, 4, 5, and 10 and 11, this is where the continuing implementation of these measures, where the Americans and the Iranian will start negotiating and reading the final deal. Therefore, within these 60 days, it just talk, nothing is finalized, even if we have seen, according to the MOU, the Americans lifting the blockade. We have heard the Treasury Minister yesterday, the Americans, saying that they gave 60 days waiver for the oil. All that is stated in the MOU. But having the inspectors at home, this is a sign of a goodwill, but on the other hand, it can be also a card in the hand of Iran, where Iran can, in case of the U.S. not implementing fully the MOU, and they have 60 days, but they have also the possibility to extend it if both sides agree. They can say, okay, we stop the inspectors and we don't want them to inspect until you fulfill the MOU. So it is really a sword on the that works on both sides, against Iran, with Iran, and against US and with the US. If there is a goodwill and the MOU is full of traps, full of mines, very difficult, particularly paragraph 1 related to Lebanon, which I think is the most polemic and difficult one to implement, because it speaks about the sovereignty and the halting of the war on all fronts. And it's not Lebanon. We're talking about Yemen too. So all that is very complicated. I don't think the issue of the IAEA and the nuclear is going to be a problem if all points are implemented.
All right. On that note, let me come back to the Strait of Hormuz, Elijah. Was the Strait of Hormuz not being run as per international law before the war started on Feb 28th? Because this is what Mohammad Bagher Ghalibaf says, the chief negotiator from the Iranian side, that it will not go back to pre-war levels. We will control it as per international law. What was Iran doing before that?
Well, because of the 1982 UNCLOS law, Iran did not ratify it. And by not ratifying as Oman did, therefore they can say, well, we have to take it to the parliament. And this is what they've done. And the parliament said, no, we have to ask for fees. But they did not define what the fees. Saying that this is not going to return to previous status, actually that doesn't damage the US a lot, because the Americans want now to bring the price of oil down for Donald Trump to sell the victory. However, asking for environmental fees, regulating the passage, or security services they can offer to tankers and ship, it's exactly like Turkey is asking for the Bosphorus crossing. That is, the Americans can live with that, as long as they understand that this is not hurting them, and 80% of the oil goes mainly to China and the rest of Asia. Therefore, the Americans really can be flexible as long as it's not a passage fee, but it is services fee. But that is still, we have 60 days, because 30 days to demine the Strait of Hormuz and 60 days to reach an agreement.
Elijah, the fact that there would be a fee on the Strait of Hormuz imposed by Iran, it will definitely help them economically. Now, this is help that they always needed. They were always having economic issues even before this war started. The economy was in doldrums. As of now, if they are allowed to have that fee, or if they go ahead and impose that fee, will it be an admission from the US side that during the course of the war, Iran realized that, hey, this is our strait, we have the power to disrupt it, and hence we will now impose a fee, which is a power we did not realize we had before? It would be an admission for the US that it was a loss on their end. Do you see it that same way?
Well, yeah, you're absolutely right. The Americans did not have an issue with the Strait of Hormuz. They came up only during this war. So Iran is negotiating really about the pre-war conditions. The nuclear dossier was on the table since 2015. Donald Trump blew up the deal, but now he is returning to negotiate again the same deal, with one difference. Instead of 10 years of Barack Obama in 2015 that ended in 2025, he is getting 15 or even 20 years. It's okay. And he's not getting Iran nuclear bomb that Iran never said he's going to make. So the Strait of Hormuz is a win for Iran. And you're right, they can collect between 40 to 70 billion a year. But on top of that, to add to what you just said, the Iranians will be paid $300 billion as a compensation for the war. But also, there are $120 billion of frozen Iranian money that they've never got from Donald Trump since 2018, when Barack Obama gave them a small portion and then did not lift the secondary sanction to allow the central bank to be connected with a SWIFT banking system. So this is why we've seen one of the delegation members is the governor of the Iranian central bank. So Iran is negotiating on something that did not have before the war. It is indeed winning.
Strait of Hormuz is one of their major bargaining chips now. Lebanon, which was never part of the negotiations, at least before Feb 28th, was the first point they wanted in their MOU and the first point they discussed in Switzerland. And of course, the $300 billion, which is a figure which has now come up as we approach this 60-day process, as it already starts, only seems to be suggesting that Iran's bargaining chips are increasing as the war has continued, while the clock on Donald Trump, it goes on ticking backward, because the time for the midterm elections is reducing as we approach forward. We'll need to wait and watch how this one is played out by the US. They still want to approach it in a coercive manner. As far as statements are concerned, what really happens, we'll need to wait. Thank you so much, Elijah, for joining me. Always a pleasure.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.